When people talk about privilege, one thing they tend to leave out is class. And that's because a lot of the people pushing this, especially in the media, come from really wealthy backgrounds themselves.
Speaking of white guilt, let's head to our next video where a TikToker who does these man on the street interviews went around a college campus, I believe it was Georgetown, and asked college students if they have white privilege. Here's what they said.
Do you have white privilege?
I believe everybody at Georgetown definitely does that is white.
100%. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think the fact that I don't need to think about my race, just going about my daily life, is a sign of white privilege.
If we're white, subliminally, we have privilege over other minorities.
Yes.
So a lot of people were angry about this. A lot of people respond with anger on the right because this went viral, this clip. What was your gut reaction?
I think if you are at Georgetown University as a student, you probably are privileged on its face. I think it's funny. I saw Glenn Greenwald point this out recently, that when people talk about privilege, one thing they tend to leave out is class. And that's because a lot of the people pushing this, especially in the media, come from really wealthy backgrounds themselves. And this, they want to kind of hide that factor. And if anything, I think class is probably the biggest privilege, right? Being born into money and connections, it's always going to give you a leg up over other people. You're going to be treated better than other people. You're going to have access to more opportunities. You're not going to have to scrimp and save. You're probably not going to have to work as hard to be successful. The list goes on. Georgetown is a very expensive, very elite, basically Ivy League institution. So I think that most people there probably are. I also thought it was interesting, though. It almost feels like you and I tried to interview people like this at the University of Washington a few weeks ago, and we got a similar reaction where it sort of felt like most students had their script and they knew what they were supposed to say according to their talking points, and they were really weary of being caught on camera saying anything that might not be totally on track. And that's sort of my impression with these kids. It's not like they've thought super deeply about it. They're just regurgitating the talking points that they've been told, probably by their professors or by other people on TikTok and the media. And I don't know. I mean, to be clear, I don't think that saying somebody has privilege because they're white is always incorrect. Of course, I, as a white woman, do not face things that Black women have to face in this country. That is simply true. I don't have to have some of the hardships that they're up against. So in that way, I guess you could say I have some privilege, but I don't like it when we base it only on race, because I think there are multiple factors that influence privilege, and many are much more important than race.
Yeah, I hate the way the left talks about white privilege, where they make it sound like you're bad, or you have less right to an opinion, or your opinion is illegitimate because of your white privilege. And they really blow the narrative out of proportion. But I think there's a grain of truth to it. I've just thought okay, my life, if I were Black, everything else about my life were Black, there would be differences. There would be challenges I would face potentially, or things I would feel differently about. For example, I'd probably be much more nervous when I got pulled over by the police, just being honest.
You'd also probably be nervous to come out, because being gay in the Black community is a whole different struggle, Yeah,
absolutely. I would have been more nervous. But so it's a legit thing to discuss, that there are privileged aspects of it. I will also say, however, there are probably ways in which if I was Black, I would have had more opportunities as affirmative action, really. Being a white male, just look at the SAT difference needed to get in to elite universities for a white male versus a Black male. It's hundreds of points lower score that you need. And that's just a fact. So there are probably some privileges going in the other direction. I think it's all legitimate to discuss. But it does feel to me a little bit like programming. Yes, I do hate the idea of privilege as one-dimensional, only about the identity politics, none of the context. Because there are some Black people who on net are much more privileged than white people, and vice versa. There are a lot of white people who are more privileged than a lot of Black people. It's all this stuff is complicated. But this surface level identity politics look at it is very reductive. And that's why I kind of reject that. But I don't want to do what some people on the right do and just completely reject all of it, go to the opposite extreme, completely bury my head in the sand. No racism ever exists. America is perfect. No, there's no differences. Everyone has equal opportunity. I think those things are also obviously not true.
I like that you bring up this reframing, because I've often said this in my own personal life as a woman, right? This is something that drives me nuts, is they often will push this, that I have less privilege because I'm a woman, and I'm supposed to feel like a victim as a woman. And that's something I've always felt from the left. And it's a big reason why I've never been attracted to the left, because I am no victim. Like, I am a badass. So I've never identified with that mentality. And do I have some things that have happened to me or I've had to face as a woman that suck or that are unique to being a woman that a man would not have to deal with? Absolutely. But I also can point out numerous examples of things that have actually made me more privileged as a woman. Like, I know that I've beaten out men for jobs who were more qualified than me because I was a woman and I was a really good look for that job, right? When I was working for a Second Amendment group right out of college, I got that job because I was a woman. I didn't know that much about the law. I didn't know that much about public policy. I really didn't even know that much about guns. I was just pro Second Amendment, but I was a cute young girl, and like, I looked really good for that group to hire. And I beat out men who were attorneys and lobbyists and had a lot more experience. I had one guy message me and he's like, "How did you get this job?" I think we know how I got this job. Also, as a woman, like, I paid for virtually nothing in my 20s. I flew on planes. I went to festivals. I got into backstage at award shows, all for free. I got drinks for free, trips for free. Like, I did not make much money in my 20s because I was working in the music business and it pays crap. But I lived the high life as a woman. And I'm telling you, I don't think any man would get to do that, even if they were super attractive. That's just not something that happens to men. So there are always different ways of looking at privilege, I think. And I think both sides make it way too one-dimensional.
And of course, as we've discussed, we both suffer terribly from pretty privilege.
We do. Yeah, it's something that haunts us and we have to work really hard to overcome it. So give us money.